Jacob and Betska. Problem is, in my personal point of view, problem is always overrated. Always and always, because whatever I have seen in my surrounding and my experience, when I am in very good mood, good successful mood, pleasant mood, so I am celebrating my things in a very limited people. And when I get a problem, then I spread so much negativity with so, so many people. So I think, why not we can take this topic in a very important way in our school book. So the problem and the good time, both is the simultaneously equal way. So you please give this insight
So I,
from you.
yes, thank you, Raj. I think I hear what you're saying is that any problems like this, we shouldn't see them as problems. We should see them as learning moments. And in fact, in our company, we say that there's no such thing as a problem person. It's only a learning person, right? So if you have a corporate leader and employees and they're fighting each other, well, what is everybody learning? Instead of blaming each other, what are we learning? Learn it and move on, instead of staying stuck in that darkness of that problem. So Jacob, I wanted to speak with you about the whole concept of firewalking and how it can relate to problem solving. So let's take a corporate problem, something going on. Maybe someone isn't making their sales, or I noticed on your profile you said weak and broke business owners blame outside reasons, right? I love that. So maybe along that line of how can we use the mind, right? Because that's what you do in firewalking, isn't it? You're using the mind, your commitment, your focus to go over those goals. So how can we do the same, do you think, in business and in life to solve problems?
Yeah, great question. For sure. One of the things for me with problems is I get excited about them now, where before I'd get upset about them.
Mm.
And I get excited about them because I realize that if I wasn't going forward, growing forward, or moving forward in business or in life, if I'm not challenging things, I don't run into problems. And I forget who wrote the book, but in a book that I read, they talk about if you give an average effort, you get an average result. And to become a successful entrepreneur, there's moments and times where you have to do above average and be willing to it. So problems are we bump into them. And what they mean is that we're growing and there's something to learn. And you were talking about that earlier. It's not a real problem. It's just that we have something to learn. It's a learning problem, if we want to call it that. And so in firewalking, there's a huge problem, right? I got these hot coals. They're minimum 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, up to 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. So which burns anything, logically, anything burns. And like I said earlier, what you do with any problem is you first address it, you focus on it, and then you raise your commitment level to choosing that no matter what, I'm going to get through this problem. And firewalking is a big problem. So we run into big problems not that often, but we run into smaller problems quite often. And that's why not only in firewalking, but I spoke about board breaking or breaking an arrow with your throat. Like, why would we ever do that? Or a trust fall, where you have to trust people to catch you.
Yeah.
Those are all experiences that are, depending on where you're at and how you address certain things, they're going to be the scariest part, maybe even more than a firewalk. For me, the arrow break was the biggest thing I had to get through. It was the hardest thing for me to do because I didn't know, I didn't speak up always. And I held back from saying things. And what the lesson is, teaches you how to speak out.
Mm.
So what I do when I do an arrow break is I have you put that intention. What are you holding back from saying, or who are you holding back from speaking to? And when you
Mhm.
break that arrow, you put that intention in.
Because
It's like,
that's the throat chakra, right? That you're doing it in the
yeah,
throat chakra, which is
yeah,
communication. Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Sorry.
And so, you know, again, that's a personal problem. A
Mhm.
board break can be a small problem. You focus on the point that you're going to hit. And if you follow through deep enough, and we show you that technique and we make sure that you practice it, but if you follow through deep enough, you not only can break a board, you can break a brick. I've had 80-year-old people with arms this big break bricks the first
Wow.
time ever trying it. I don't recommend anybody does any of these things on their own. You have to be
Mm.
certified to train people, or
Mhm.
you have to go through a long series of progressions of belts in martial arts to get to that stage where you can actually do it. But the
Mhm.
technique itself is the same no matter what. So problems are things that in business, you should be excited about the problem, because that means that you're taking steps forward. And now I bumped into this, I have a new problem. I have to hire an assistant. Oh, I have too many calls to make. I don't have enough time. These are all good problems if you look at it that way, versus I got this big problem and now we're in a
Mhm.
negative space.
Wow. I am just so fascinated with the whole topic, and I'm wondering if I might get a little personal here. How did you and your wife get through a double lung transplant? You know, what did
Yeah, no, thanks
was it
for
about?
asking.
Was it about focus and commitment, or like how did you guys get through that? I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, no, it's big time huge.
Mhm.
My wife was just her commitment to live
Mhm.
and her desire to be with her family
Ah,
was enough
okay.
for her to go through all the stuff she had to go through, which was 2 years of prodding, poking, testing every single function that you could think of in your body, heart catheters, stress test, needles, overnights in hospitals, just to get on the list. Right? Doesn't promise you you're going to get a transplant. That's just to qualify to get on the list. It took about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Wow.
When we get married, it's the best of time. It's easy to say I do to those commitments. When it really happens, it tests every ounce of your commitment
Mm.
on a daily basis sometimes.
Mhm.
And I know somebody from Vancouver. She had a double lung and a heart transplant.
Oh.
And the 2 years prior, she had um, a really aggressive cancer, and the radiation and chemo is what damaged her lungs and heart. And she
Mm.
had 2 young kids. And in recovery from the lung transplant, her husband called and said, I can't take it anymore. I filed for divorce, which
Oh
is
gosh.
like, oh my God, how could somebody do that? On top of it, he did it on the phone. Like, that was
Ah.
my response. I
Mhm.
called her during my process of going through this, and I said, hey, I won't use her name, but I said, hey, I still feel the same way about what your husband did, which is not positive in a positive light. I said, but I totally understand how he did it. Like, why?
Mhm.
Because it tests every ounce of your commitment,
Yeah.
and you just have to lean into love, big
Mhm.
time. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I learned through this a lot about myself, commitment, how deep, how much I can actually do and tolerate and put up with, and within my own self, right? A lot of it. But also, I told Raj this the other day. I said, I learned to love the messes. All the stuff
Ah.
that used to, excuse my language, that used to piss me off, right?
Mhm.
Like, get me angry a little bit about Tina. Like, man, why do you put the spoon here when you can just put it in the spoon holder and now we don't have to scrub the thing, or, just menial things, but things that in relationships sometimes get you. And I
Mhm.
learned to love them because when I saw them, that reminded me that she's still there.
Ah. Right.
And it became a beautiful thing instead of a pain point. So
Yeah.
I share this with people in hopes that if you have these little things that really bother you, like understand they're really blessings in disguise, because it reminds you this amazing person who's chose to be at your side and to share love and life is with you. And I learned how to sit next to each other in total silence, not doing anything, and being in pure joy, because being there alone in that chair would have been far worse than being there in silence with somebody that I care about that deeply.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
a lot of lessons in this, more up than down, but it was definitely not a cakewalk. It's some tough stuff. Like, I don't recommend this to anybody unless you absolutely have to do it.
Well, you know what I find interesting is that believing in a higher power, that thank God you had the firewalking experience. Thank God.
Yeah.
Right? Because it taught you so much. It prepared you for this health situation with your wife. And do give her our best wishes, and we pray for her continued health and the
Thank
best
you.
for
She's
you as
doing
well,
really
Jacob.
well.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Isn't
she's
that
actually
great?
doing pretty well. She's an amazing person. She's never once complained. Never once that I've
Wow.
heard ask why me, like, why did this happen to me?
Wow.
Never once. She was on oxygen tanks, and it didn't stop her from doing anything. We would just take her tanks with us, and we'd go do whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it did, like, I learned so much about how to be strong and in your power and not be in victim mode through her experience.
Wow.
And then our whole family, you know, like, I understand why she wants to live, because we have a small family, but it's extremely tight, you know, and it became even deeper through this experience, not more shattered or, you know, frazzled because of it. So yeah, and she had her transplant in August, and she's, you know, slowly, it's a slow progression, but she's slowly doing so good. Like, right now she's at the gym working out, you know.
Wow.
So yeah, life is good.
Well, Jacob, I have tears in my eyes. You have touched me beyond. So thank you for being here with us today, and let's meet again. Yeah.
Thank
God
you
bless
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Can anybody out there hear me? Hear me?